Guten Abend.
Let us begin with prayer.
Lass uns mit Gebet anfangen.
Dear Father in heaven,
Lieber Vater im Himmel,
thank you that we can open your word now
danke, dass wir jetzt dein Wort öffnen können
and that we can again learn of you,
und dass wir wieder von dir lernen können.
and we need always your grace,
Und wir brauchen ständig deine Gnade,
especially when it comes to all these symbolic representations.
besonders wenn es zu all den symbolischen Darstellungen kommt.
We many times don't understand them as we should,
Sehr oft verstehen wir sie nicht so, wie wir sollten.
but you promised to teach us all things and to guide us into all truth.
Du hast verheißen, uns alle Dinge zu lehren und uns in alle Wahrheit zu führen.
So please also explain to us this illustration about the Red Heifer.
Deswegen bitte hilf uns auch, diese Darstellung über diese rote Kuh zu verstehen
And help us to understand how this also applies to us.
und hilf uns zu verstehen, wie das auch auf uns anzuwenden ist.
Help us to bring also together all the other stories with it,
Und hilf uns auch, all die anderen Geschichten damit zusammenzubringen
and understand the prophetic relevance for us.
und dass wir die prophetische Relevanz für uns verstehen können.
And we ask and pray all this in Jesus' name.
Und wir bitten und beten all dies in Jesu Namen.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so this evening we want to look at this Red Heifer.
Heute Abend wollen wir uns diese rote Kuh anschauen.
And I don't know about you, but I think 2 or 3 days ago I posted a short video clip.
Also ich weiß nicht, ob ihr das gesehen habt, aber vor ein paar Tagen, da habe ich ein kurzes Video gepostet.
And it was just a short report about what they planned in Israel this Passover.
Das war ein kurzer Bericht darüber, was sie in Israel an diesem Passa planen.
Or just before the Passover.
Oder kurz vor dem Passa.
Yeah, they want to sacrifice this red heifer there in order that they would prepare the building of the third temple.
Sie wollen dort diese rote Kuh opfern, damit sie dann das Aufbau des dritten Tempels vorbereiten können.
Okay, and therefore all these things are in the making. Okay.
Und so all das findet gerade statt oder ist vorbereitet.
And obviously they apply all these things literally, and also even though they apply it literally, they also apply it wrongly in the literal sense. Okay.
Und sie wenden all diese Dinge buchstäblich statt und
Buchstäblich an.
sie wenden es buchstäblich an und sogar im Buchstäblichen machen sie es falsch.
Okay, but we obviously need to understand what it means spiritually and especially prophetically here for the end of the world.
Aber wir müssen natürlich verstehen, was es geistlich bedeutet und besonders so die prophetische Bedeutung am Ende der Welt.
Okay, so therefore let us turn now to Numbers chapter 19.
Gehen wir jetzt zu 4. Mose 19.
And this is here this chapter about the law of the red heifer.
Und das ist das Kapitel über das Gesetz, über diese rote Kuh.
And we want to read the first couple of verses now.
Wir wollen jetzt die ersten paar Verse lesen.
And there are also some notes in the livestream book.
Es gibt auch Notizen in der Livestream-Gruppe.
Okay, so let's begin verse 1.
Wir fangen in Vers 1 an.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord hath commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel that they bring thee a red heifer, without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came a yoke. And ye shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger, and sprinkle of her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. And one shall burn the heifer in his sight, her skin, her flesh, and her blood, with her dung shall he burn. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water. And afterward he shall come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the even. And he that burneth her shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the even. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and lay them up without the camp, in a clean place. And it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for water of separation. It is a purification for sin. And he that gathereth the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the even. And it shall be unto the children of Israel, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among them, for a statute forever. He that toucheth the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purify not himself the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean. Whosoever toucheth the dead body of any man that is dead, and purifieth not himself, defileth the tabernacle of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Because the water of separation was not sprinkled upon him, he shall be unclean, his uncleanness is yet upon him. Okay, so to verse 13, we can stop here for now.
Wir haben bis Vers 13 gelesen.
So, just when we look at this literal illustration here,
Wenn wir uns diese buchstäbliche Darstellung anschauen,
so there was a red heifer to be chosen,
da sollte eine rote Kuh ausgewählt werden,
without spot and blemish,
Makel,
and upon which never came a yoke.
und auf die nie ein Joch gelegt wurde.
Then it was to be brought outside the camp
Und dann sollte es außerhalb des Lagers gebracht werden
and set before the high priest,
und vor den Hohepriester gesetzt werden.
and somebody was to slay it in front of the high priest.
Und jemand sollte es vor dem Hohepriester schlachten.
The high priest was then to take the blood and sprinkle it 7 times
Der Hohepriester sollte dann das Blut nehmen und das 7-mal sprenkeln
before the tabernacle of the congregation.
vor der Stiftshütte der Versammlung.
And this one who brought this or slew this heifer is then also to burn this heifer.
Und derjenige, der diese Kuh geschlachtet hat, sollte sie auch verbrennen.
And then the priest was to put in cedar, hyssop and scarlet into this fire as well.
Und dann sollte der Priester auch Zedernholz, Hyssop und Scharlach ins Feuer werfen.
And eventually, just to summarize the last bit, is the ashes of the heifer then was to be mingled with water.
Und jetzt noch, um das letzte zusammenzufassen, also die Asche von dieser Kuh sollten dann mit Wasser vermischt werden.
And this was then this water of separation, as it's called here.
Und dann wurde das Wasser der Absonderung genannt.
And whenever somebody touched a dead body, he was to be cleansed with this water on the 3rd day.
Und immer wenn jemand einen toten Körper berührt hatte, sollte er mit diesem Wasser am 3. Tag gereinigt werden.
Because he was unclean for 7 days.
Weil er war ja 7 Tage lang unrein.
And when he was cleansed then with this water on the 3rd day, he was clean after 7 days.
Und wenn er am 3. Tag mit diesem Wasser gereinigt wurde, dann war er nach 7 Tagen rein.
If he was not sprinkled with this water on the 3rd day, he was not clean after 7 days.
Und wenn er am 3. Tag nicht mit diesem Wasser gewaschen oder besprenkelt wurde, dann war er am 7. Tag nicht rein.
And he would be then cut off from the congregation if he was to go into the tabernacle in this condition.
Und dann würde er von der Versammlung abgeschnitten werden, wenn er so da hineingehen würde.
In diesem Zustand.
In diesem Zustand.
Okay, good. So now let's look at this step by step.
Schauen wir uns jetzt das Schritt für Schritt an.
So let's begin in verse 2 again.
Fangen wir nochmal in Vers 2 an.
Let's read this again.
Lass uns das nochmal
It
lesen.
says, "This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord hath commanded, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel that they bring thee a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke." Okay, so we understand all sacrifices point to whom?
Wir verstehen, alle Opfer weisen auf wen hin?
Christ, right?
Auf Christus.
But Christ also then again typifies his people, right?
Aber Christus schattet auch wiederum sein Volk voraus.
Okay, so without spot and blemish,
Ohne Makel und Flecken
yeah, it's this perfect offering, right?
ist das vollkommene Opfer.
So let's just look at one text. I mean, we're familiar with this point. Therefore, one text suffices. Let's go to 1 Peter 1, chapter 1, verse 19.
Gehen wir zu 1. Petrus 1, Vers 19.
And here it speaks about Christ being this perfect offering.
Und hier spricht es über Christus, der dieses vollkommene Opfer ist.
It says, but with the precious blood of Christ as a lamb without blemish and without spot. So here he's represented as a lamb, but he's also this heifer.
Hier wird er als das Lamm dargestellt, aber er ist auch diese Kuh.
And let's go also to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 22.
Geht auch zu 1. Petrus 2, Vers 22.
Why he was without a spot and blemish.
Warum er ohne Makel und Flecken war.
It says, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. Right? So he was this sinless offering.
Er war dieses sündlose Opfer.
Okay, good. But it also said that there was not to come a yoke upon him.
Und
Right?
es sagt auch, es sollte kein Joch darauf gelegt werden.
So let's just go to John.
Gehen wir zu Johannes,
Chapter 10.
Kapitel 10.
John 10. We can begin in verse 11.
Johannes 10 und wir fangen ab Vers 11 an.
It says, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for his sheep. But he that is an hireling and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. The hireling fleeth, because he is an hireling, and careth not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and I am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Actually, it's no, it's here. Verse 17 and 18.
Jetzt Vers 17 und 18.
Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life, that I might take it again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. So, what does Jesus say about himself here?
Was sagt
What does he
Jesus
have?
hier über sich? Was hat er?
Yeah. Yeah, he is a free being, right?
Also Kraft, also er ist ein freies Wesen.
So, because it says when you just go to Romans 6, verse 16,
Geht zu Römer 6, Vers 16.
Romans 6:16, it says, know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death, of obedience unto righteousness. So, we, in a technical sense, are always under this one yoke or that other yoke, right?
Also im technischen Sinne sind wir immer unter dem einen oder dem anderen Joch.
Yes. So we either serve Satan or we serve Christ.
Entweder dienen wir Satan oder Christus.
Okay, what does Jesus say? Let's go to Matthew 11.
Was sagt Jesus? Geht zu Matthäus 11.
Verse 29 to 30.
Vers 29 bis 30.
It says, take my yoke upon you Learn of me. For meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Right, so Christ offers us a yoke, Satan also offers us a yoke. Right?
Also Christus bietet uns ein Joch an und Satan bietet uns ein Joch an.
Okay, so, but obviously Christ's yoke is easy and light.
Aber Christi Joch ist einfach und leicht.
So just go, please note to your notes.
Geht jetzt bitte zu euren Notizen.
Let's read here these first few passages
Und
by Sister White.
Lass uns die ersten Abschnitte von Ellen White lesen.
So let's read this first quote here.
Lass uns das erste Zitat lesen.
It says, by a word, Christ could have mastered the powers of Satan, but he came into the world that he might endure every test, every provocation that is possible for man to bear, and yet not be provoked or impassioned or retaliate in word and spirit or in action. For the honor and glory of God, he was to offer himself a living, spotless sacrifice to the Father. This was symbolized by the red heifer, upon which was to be no mar. Okay, so here she clearly says this was this perfect sacrifice.
Hier sagt sie klar, das war dieses vollkommene Opfer.
Christ was a spectacle to the world, to angels and to man. The worlds unfallen, the heavenly angels and the fallen race were watching every movement made by the representative of the Father and the representative of perfect humanity. And his character was without a flaw. In his mouth was found no guile. All the humiliation which he endured was in behalf of the fallen race, that man might have the mind of Christ. Okay, next quote rather.
Nächstes Zitat
This is now from 4 Testimonies.
von 4. Band der Zeugnisse.
The children of Israel were anciently commanded to make an offering for the entire congregation to purify them from ceremonial defilement. This sacrifice was a red heifer and represented the more perfect offering that should redeem from the pollution of sin. This was an occasional sacrifice for the purification of all those who had necessarily or accidentally touched the dead. Okay, so whenever you came in contact with the dead, this was the sacrifice you had to do.
Also immer wenn du mit den Toten in Kontakt kamst, dann sollte das Opfer sein, was du tun.
Or rather, they stored the ashes, as we read, for this case that somebody needs it, right?
Oder vielmehr, sie haben die Asche aufbewahrt für den Fall, dass jemand es braucht.
They mingled it with water, and we read about the water of separation to be sprinkled on you.
Und sie haben das eben mit Wasser vermischt und wir haben ja gelesen, das Wasser der Absonderung sollte dann auf dich gesprenkelt werden.
All who came in contact with death in any way were considered ceremonially unclean. This was to forcibly impress the minds of the Hebrews with the fact that death came in consequence of sin, and therefore is a representative of sin. The one heifer, the one ark, the one brazen serpent impressively point to the one great offering, the sacrifice of Christ. It says here, this heifer was to be red, which was a symbol of blood. It must be without spot or blemish, and one that had never borne a yoke. Here again Christ was typified. The Son of God came voluntarily to accomplish the work of atonement. There was no obligatory yoke upon him, for he was independent and above all law. So what yoke was never on him?
Welches Joch war nie auf ihm?
Yeah, no obligatory yoke, right?
Kein obligatorisches Joch.
Which yoke is on us at the moment?
Welches Joch ist auf uns? Im Moment?
Yeah, yoke of sin, okay.
Das Joch der Sünde.
So Satan requires his price of us, right?
Und Satan fordert seinen Preis von uns.
Okay. So it says the angels, as God's intelligent messengers, were under the yoke of obligation. No personal sacrifice of theirs could atone for the guilt of fallen man. Christ alone was free from the claims of the law to undertake the redemption of the sinful race. He had power to lay down his life and to take it up again. who, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Yet this glorious being loved the poor sinner, and took upon himself the form of a servant, that he might suffer and die in man's behalf. Jesus might have remained at his Father's right hand, wearing his kingly crown and royal robes, but he chose to exchange all the riches, honor, and glory of heaven for the poverty of humanity, and his station of high command for the horrors of Gethsemane and the humiliation and agony of Calvary. He became a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, that by his baptism of suffering and blood he might purify and redeem a guilty world. Lo, I come, was the joyful assent, to do thy will, O my God. Okay, so here we can see what it means, that it was a red heifer, was the symbol of his blood.
Hier können wir sehen, was es bedeutete, dass es eine rote Kuh sein sollte. Es war ein Symbol für sein Blut.
And that no yoke was ever on him.
Und dass kein Joch jemals auf ihm war.
And that he was free of all these requirements.
Dass er frei von all diesen Forderungen war.
Okay, so now let's go back to Numbers chapter 19.
Gehen wir zurück zu 4. Mose 19.
And let's read verse 3.
Lasst uns Vers 3 lesen.
It says, And ye shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. So where was the heifer to be slain?
Wo sollte diese Kuh geschlachtet werden?
Without outside the camp, right?
Außerhalb des Lagers.
Okay, so let's go now to Hebrews chapter 13.
Gehen wir zu Hebräer 13.
And let us read verse 11 to 13.
Wir lesen Vers 11 bis 13.
It says, For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned without the camp. Wherefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Let us go forth therefore unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach. Okay, so that the heifer was slain without the camp represents how Christ died without the camp, right?
Also, dass die Kuh außerhalb des Lagers geschlachtet wurde, stellt also dar, wie Christus außerhalb des Lagers starb.
But also what we should follow, the example we should follow.
Aber auch das Beispiel, dem wir folgen sollten.
So that we also will be outside the gate bearing his reproach, right?
Dass wir auch außerhalb der Tore sein werden und seine Schmach tragen werden.
But it's a counterfeit. I mean, in the sense that they're going to do that to
Exactly,
you.
yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's actually the punishment of the scapegoat that's out the camp because they cast you into
Outer, yeah.
outer darkness.
Yes, exactly.
Aber das ist eben eine Fälschung, weil das werden sie dir antun. Sie werden dich zum Sündenbock machen, dich in äußerste Finsternis werfen.
Okay, so let's look at this point.
Schauen wir uns diesen Punkt an.
Let's go now to Leviticus chapter 13.
Gehen wir zu 3. Mose 13.
Leviticus 13, verse 45 to 46.
3. Mose 13, Vers 45 bis 46.
Speaking about the lepers, okay?
Er spricht über die Leprakranken.
Which verse is that?
Leviticus 13, verse 45 to 46.
3. Mose 13, Vers 45 bis 46.
It says, And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, Unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled, he is unclean. He shall dwell alone, without the camp shall his habitation be. Okay, so the leper is where?
Also der Lepra
Outside
ist
the
wo?
Outside the camp.
Der
Okay.
Leprakranke außerhalb des Lagers.
Go also please to Numbers 5, verse 2.
Geht auch bitte zu 4. Mose 5, Vers
Says,
2.
put you out the synagogue,
Yes.
they'll put you to death and think they're doing God's will.
Exactly.
Es sagt, die werden dich aus der Synagoge ausschließen und zu Tode bringen und denken, sie machen Gott einen Dienst.
So Numbers 5, verse 2.
4. Mose 5, Vers 2.
It says, command the children of Israel that they put out of the camp every leper and every one that hath an issue and whosoever is defiled by the dead. Okay, all these here were to be outside the camp, right?
Weil diejenigen sollten außerhalb des Lagers gebracht werden.
Also, please go to Leviticus 24.
Geht auch zu 3. Mose 24.
Yes. Leviticus 24
3. Mose 24.
and verse 14.
Und Vers 14.
That's the one that cursed the Lord, I think. Yeah. Okay, so verse 14 it says,
Derjenige, der den Herrn verflucht hat. In Vers 14 sagt es,
bring forth him that hath cursed without the camp, and let all that heard him lay their hands upon his head, and let all the congregation stone him. So what do we see here?
was sehen wir hier?
Was put out the camp, right?
Er wurde außerhalb des Lagers
Laying hands on
Yeah, they
gestoßen.
lay their hands on him, right?
Und sie haben ihre Hände auf ihn
Yeah,
gelegt.
it's a scapegoat, and they now stone him,
Das
right?
ist der Sündenbock und sie steinigen ihn.
Okay, so and we know this: he that is without sin shall cast a stone, right?
Wir wissen, der ohne Sünde ist, der soll den Stein werfen.
So let's go to Revelation, chapter 20,
Gehen wir zur Offenbarung 20
21 rather.
oder 21.
Verse 27,
Und Vers 27.
speaking here about the holy city.
Da spricht über die heilige Stadt.
Which chapter?
21, 27
Offenbarung 21, Vers 27.
says, and there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. So who will not enter the city?
Wer wird nicht in die Stadt eintreten?
Any sinners.
Yeah, all these lepers, right?
All die Leprakranken.
Okay, so therefore this was a living parable, that when you were a leper you were without the camp, because the camp illustrated this holy city.
Das
Okay.
war ein lebendiges Gleichnis. Wenn du ein Leprakranker warst, dann musstest du außerhalb des Lagers sein, weil das Lager hat die heilige Stadt dargestellt.
Okay, and when you just go now to verse 7 to 8,
Und geht jetzt zu Vers 7 und 8.
what will happen to you when you're outside the city?
Was mit dir passieren wird, wenn du außerhalb der Stadt bist.
Says, he that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and all idolaters and liars, all liars, shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So, and we saw they put him out the camp, the one that cursed, laid the hand on him and stoned him, right?
Wir haben gesehen, dass sie ihre Hände auf denjenigen gelegt haben, der verflucht hat und also ihn außerhalb des Lagers gebracht haben und ihn gesteinigt haben.
Okay, so illustrating this final judgment that will come upon the scapegoat and all those that are like the scapegoat. Okay.
Und das stellt eben diese letzte Bestrafung dar über den Sündenbock und all diejenigen, die wie der Sündenbock sind.
So therefore, when they put Christ outside the camp, this what they were illustrating. They said basically, you're this accursed thing. Okay.
Deswegen, als sie Christus außerhalb des Lagers gebracht haben, da haben sie also, das wollten sie damit sagen oder darstellen, dass er der Verfluchte ist.
Okay. So in this sense, he was now illustrating somebody who would receive the divine punishment.
Also
Okay.
in dem Sinne stellt hier jemanden dar, der jetzt diese göttliche Bestrafung erhalten hat.
And literally, he also did, right? Because he played the role of the sinner.
Und
Okay.
buchstäblich hat er dies auch getan, weil er hat die Rolle des Sünders gespielt.
Okay. So therefore, we can see that this is what they will also then do to us. They will make us the scapegoats, put us out of the camp, and execute judgment upon us. Okay?
Daher können wir sehen, das werden sie auch mit uns tun. Sie werden uns außerhalb des Lagers bringen und über uns, also uns zum Sündbock machen und über uns Gericht ausführen.
Okay, but obviously that's, as Brother Mark already said, it's a counterfeit. Okay,
Wie Bruder Mark schon gesagt hat, das ist natürlich eine Fälschung.
because once they do this, then immediately it will come back on their head, and the true one will come upon them.
Also sobald sie das tun, wird es sofort über diese wahren Sündbock
I think,
kommen und dann wird das über sie ausgeführt.
sorry, I think in Isaiah 63, you see an illustration of this red heifer. You know this?
Isaiah 63?
Yeah, verses 1 to 6.
Okay.
Also in Jesaja 63, da kann
Isaiah
man
63,
eine
okay.
Darstellung von dieser roten Kuh sehen.
Verses 1 to?
6.
Verse 1 bis 6.
Okay. Then let's read those verses. Isaiah 63, 1 to 6.
Jesaja 63, 1 bis 6.
It says, "Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Bosra? This that is glorious in his apparel, travelling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the winefat? I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. For I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment. For the day of vengeance is mine, for the day of vengeance is in mine heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. And I looked, and there was none to help, and I wondered that there was none to uphold. Therefore mine own arm brought salvation unto me, and my fury it upheld me. And I will tread down the people in my anger, and make them drunk in my fury, and I will bring down their strength to the earth."
So that's when he punishes the scapegoat.
Da bestraft dann den Sündenbock.
The point is that, you know, they stick this scarlet garment on him, you know, and make him the scapegoat, but actually this is a symbol of this. I mean, he's got this garment and it's totally stained red. He's this red heifer there. He's the one that is not only atoning for our sins, but also punishing the wicked.
Also sie haben ihm ja den Scharlachumhang angezogen und deswegen hier können wir eine Darstellung sehen, dass es also diese rote Kuh ist, weil er also sühnt nicht nur für die Sünde, sondern bestraft auch die Bösen.
I mean, it's the saints, right?
But the point is, this is why it said the red was symbolizing his blood for atonement, right?
Yeah.
But that blood here would be of the wicked being punished. So
Yes, but
two different things.
is not one, because the fact is that his blood is when they put him on the cross, but this is when they go to the cross. It's not the same thing. The point is that, remember, this red heifer is actually his saints, right? Because they're the ones that's going to execute judgment. It doesn't matter. It's just the fact is here, he has on a red garment, and that garment points to the blood, and that's their sin. Right? It doesn't matter. For me, you just see the parallel.
I mean, as I understand, one blood is the atoning blood, and the other blood is this blood that is there for the execution when they execute. Okay.
Die Frage war wegen dem Blut, ob das hier dieses versöhnte Blut ist, dieses rote, oder ob das jetzt das Blut wegen dem Ausführungsgericht ist.
Okay, good. So let's go back to Numbers chapter 19.
Gehen wir zurück zu 4. Mose 19.
So. verse 19 and let us read now verse 4.
4. Mose 19 und wir lesen jetzt Vers 4.
So we saw it was to be put without the camp and then slain, and verse 4 says,
Er sollte außerhalb des Lagers gebracht werden und dort geschlachtet
and
werden.
Eleazar the priest shall take off her blood with his finger and sprinkle off her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. So how many times?
Wie oft?
7 times, right?
7 Mal.
So when you go to Leviticus chapter 16,
Wenn jetzt zu 3. Mose 16 geht,
verse 14 for instance,
Vers 14 zum
that
Beispiel,
would be the Day of Atonement here.
das wäre der Versöhnungstag.
And that's just one illustration. We know there are many illustrations of the 7 times sprinkling, right, in these sacrifices.
Das ist jetzt nur eine Darstellung. Wir wissen, dass es mehrere Darstellungen davon gibt, wie bei den Opfern 7 Mal das gesprengt wird.
So Leviticus 16:14.
3. Mose 16, Vers 14.
It's the Day of Atonement here.
Das ist der Versöhnungstag.
And he shall take of the blood of the bullock and sprinkle it with his finger upon the mercy seat eastward, and before the mercy seat shall he sprinkle off the blood with his finger 7 times. Right? Okay. So, and let's go now to this quote by Sister White
Jetzt
again.
gehen wir wieder zum Zitat von Ellen White.
Let's read what she says here.
Lass uns lesen, was sie hier sagt.
And we want to read here in the next paragraph in 4T 121.2.
Wir wollen jetzt den nächsten Absatz lesen bei 4t 121.2.
It says here, the sacrificial heifer was conducted without the camp and slain in the most imposing manner. Thus Christ suffered without the gates of Jerusalem, for Calvary was outside the city walls. This was to show that Christ did not die for the Hebrews alone, but for all mankind. Okay, so that was also an illustration. Outside the camp, he died now for the world, right?
Also das war auch eine Darstellung, weil er außerhalb des Lagers war, ist er für die Welt gestorben.
Okay, and we'll see this has some nice significance.
So I don't get your thinking, because I don't know why you can't see that in Isaiah 63. It's exactly the same place. It's outside the camp.
Also Jesaja 63 ist
That's
auch
where-
außerhalb des
That's
Lagers.
where.
No, this blood here is
I know, Lawrence, but
atoning blood.
we're not arguing that point. The scapegoat was given for an atonement, right?
Yeah, but it's not the blood of the wicked that you will sprinkle.
Like, these are 2 points that are exactly the same place.
Yeah, I mean, they might be at the same place, but it's
the
2
point,
different
his
kind of blood.
is when they murdered him, right?
Mhm.
And they pay the price of that.
Yes.
What they do to him.
Yeah, but you don't take the blood of the wicked and sprinkle it to cleanse others with it. It's
No, I'm not saying that.
yeah,
you
but
do.
that's what the allegory says here. He sprinkled it in order to clean, right? And that's also what she says here, to cleanse sinners with it.
I'm not arguing that point.
No, but you say this blood is the same as that.
Okay, so when Abraham took Isaac, right, it says, I've provided for thee a sacrifice. Okay, answer me that one. Who was the sacrifice provided for him? Was the Gentiles. That's written right there. That's what I'm saying. It's deeper than you think. I think you're looking at it too narrow. That doesn't matter. It's exactly the same point in time.
Okay, let's just continue now. So let's read here.
Lesen wir noch weiter.
So it says here, this was to show that Christ did not die for the Hebrews alone, but for all mankind. He proclaims to a fallen world that he has come to be their Redeemer and urges them to accept the salvation he offers them. The heifer, having been slain in a most solemn manner, the priest, clothed in pure white garments, took the blood of his hands as it issued from the body of the victim and cast it toward the temple 7 times. So here we have the 7 times sprinkling, right?
Hier haben wir die 7 Mal sprengen.
And having a high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. So this blood, what does it do?
Was macht dieses Blut?
washes you. Be washed in
Yes.
the blood of the Lamb.
So it sprinkles your heart from an evil conscience, it says here,
Also es
right?
sprengt dein Herz von einem bösen Gewissen.
Okay, so, and it was 7 times applied, okay, this blood.
Dieses Blut wurde 7-mal angewandt.
So let's go now to the next paragraph.
Gehen wir zum nächsten Absatz.
It says, the body of the heifer was burned to ashes, which signified a whole and ample sacrifice. This was similar then to this whole burnt offering, you remember?
Das war ähnlich zu diesem ganzen Brandopfer.
What was the burnt offering signifying again?
Was sollte nochmal das Brandopfer darstellen?
This complete consecration to God,
Die
right?
vollständige Weihe zu Gott.
The ashes were then gathered up by a person uncontaminated by contact with the dead and placed in a vessel containing water from a running stream. This clean and pure person then took a cedar stick with scarlet cloth and a bunch of hyssop and sprinkled the contents of the vessel upon the tent and the people assembled. This ceremony was repeated several times in order to be thorough and was done as a purification from sin. Okay, so what was it done? It was done several times in order to thorough, exactly.
Es wurde mehrmals gemacht, damit es gründlich war.
Okay, let's continue.
Lesen wir weiter.
Thus Christ, in his own spotless righteousness, after shedding his precious blood, enters into the holy place to cleanse the sanctuary. And there the crimson current is brought into the service of reconciling God to man. Some may look upon this slaying of the heifer as a meaningless ceremony, but it was done by the command of God and bears a deep significance that has not lost its application to the present time. The priest used cedar and hyssop, dipping them into the cleansing water and sprinkling the unclean. This symbolized the blood of Christ spilled to cleanse us from moral impurities. The repeated sprinklings illustrate the thoroughness of the work that must be accomplished for the repenting sinner. All that he has must be consecrated. So it was repeatedly sprinkled, right?
Es wurde beständig oder mehrmals gesprengt.
So it shows us, right, how the Lord is along the line, along the time here, the way. Thank you. Yes, He's thoroughly cleansing us, right?
Also es zeigt uns, wie der Herr uns entlang des Weges gründlich reinigt.
So, for instance, here, right?
Zum Beispiel hier.
What goes forth here?
Was geht hier vorwärts?
Midnight cry.
And the midnight cry.
Der
Right?
Mitternachtsruf.
And what is the midnight cry?
Und was ist der Mitternachtsruf?
Cleansing, healing message.
Yes. Okay.
Eine reinigende,
The
heilende
bird.
Botschaft.
Yes, and we come to the bird. Okay.
Der Vogel.
But how many times does the Lord speak here?
Wie oft spricht der Herr hier?
See, 7 thunders.
7 thunders, right?
7 Donner.
So it's this, because the blood is also the word, right?
Weil das Blut ist auch das Wort.
Okay, so it's this thorough sprinkling 7 times until you're clean at the end. Okay.
Das ist dieses gründliche Sprengen, bis du am Ende rein bist.
Because the number 7 signifies what?
Weil diese Zahl 7
Yeah, perfection,
stellt
completeness.
was dar?
Right?
Diese Vollständigkeit,
Once you
Perfektion.
received it 7 times, now you're completely clean. Okay.
Sobald du es 7 Mal erhalten hast, bist du vollständig rein.
Okay. And it says here that it will consecrate you now to the Lord. And let's continue.
Es sagt hier, dass es dich dem Herrn weihen wird. Und lesen wir weiter.
The last bit of this paragraph and then the next one also.
Also der letzte Teil des Absatzes und dann auch in der nächsten.
Not only should his own soul be washed and clean and pure, but he should strive to have his family, his domestic arrangements, his property, and his entire belongings consecrated to God. After the tent had been sprinkled with hyssop, over the door of those cleansed was written, "I am not my own, Lord, I am thine." So what was now upon them?
Was war jetzt über sie?
Blood.
Yes. Okay, it says, was written over the door, "I am not my own, Lord, I'm thine."
Also
Right?
jetzt über ihre Tür wurde geschrieben, ich bin nicht mein eigen Herr, ich bin dein.
So what is this?
Was ist das?
It's a seal.
Yeah, the seal, right?
Das Siegel.
Okay, because if you're not your own, what is this? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 16, I think it is.
Also wenn du nicht mehr dein eigen bist, was ist es dann? Gehen wir zu 3. Mose 16.
Yes, exactly. Alright, no, it's not in this chapter. Where is it?
Exodus.
Yeah, Exodus 28. Exactly.
2. Mose 28.
Yeah, verse 36.
2. Mose 28, Vers 36.
This was for the high priest.
Das war für den Hohepriester.
And it says, "And thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and grave upon it, like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord." Right? So he was now God's.
Er gehörte jetzt Gott.
So it illustrates now the seal of God is upon you. Right?
Stellt jetzt dar, wenn das Siegel Gottes auf dir ist.
So as soon as you have received the 7 times sprinkling, now you belong to God. Okay?
Sobald du diese 7 Mal Springen erhalten hast, gehörst du Gott.
Because what is the seal of God?
Weil was ist das Siegel Gottes?
A settling into the truth, intellectually and spiritually, that you cannot be moved.
Ein sich gründen in der Wahrheit, intellektuell als auch geistlich, damit man nicht bewegt werden kann.
That's why it needs to be 7 times, because then it's complete. Okay?
Deswegen muss es 7 Mal sein, weil dann ist es abgeschlossen.
Okay.
Komplett.
So, and Mark mentioned this bird, right?
Mark hat diesen Vogel erwähnt.
This morning also we read about it.
Heute Morgen haben wir auch darüber gelesen.
And this bird was there to cleanse the leper, right?
Und dieser Vogel war dazu da, den Leprakranken
But
zu
before we go there,
heilen.
let's just go back one more time to Numbers 19.
Bevor wir dahin gehen, gehen wir nochmal zu 4. Mose 19
The bird
zurück.
that died.
Also
So.
der Vogel, der gestorben ist, war dazu da.
So Numbers 19,
4. Mose 19,
verse 5 to 6.
Verse 5 bis 6.
Says, "And one shall burn the heifer in his sight. Her skin and her flesh and her blood with her dung shall he burn. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer." So what did he throw in there also?
Das hat er da auch reingeworfen.
Cedar, hyssop and scarlet, right?
Cedar, Hyssop und Scharlach.
So now let's go to Leviticus chapter 14.
Geht jetzt zu 3. Mose 14.
Beginning verse 1.
Vers 1 anfängt.
"And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest. And the priest shall go forth out of the camp." So, this also goes out the camp, right?
Er geht auch außerhalb des Lagers,
So, where the lepers are.
wo die Leprakranken
"And the
sind.
priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of leprosy be healed in the leper, then shall the priest command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 birds live and clean, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop." So here we again have cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop, right?
Hier haben wir wieder Zedernholz, Scharlach und Hyssop.
And these 2 birds.
Und diese 2 Vögel.
And verse 5.
Und Vers 5.
"And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, and take the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water." So, the bird that was killed was illustrating Christ's atonement, right?
Der Vogel, der getötet wurde, der stellte Christi Sühne dar.
But the one that is now dipped into the blood is the leper that is now cleansed to be set free, right?
Aber der Vogel, der in dieses Blut getaucht wurde, und dann, also der stellt diesen Leprakranken dar, der dann reinigt und freigesetzt wird.
Because it says now verse 7,
Weil Vers 7 sagt,
"And he shall sprinkle upon him that is to be cleansed from the leprosy 7 times. How many times?
wie oft?
7 times.
7
Right?
Mal.
"And shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose into the open field." What did he say to Lazarus when he came out of the grave?
Was hat er zu Lazarus gesagt, als er aus dem Grab kam?
loose him, right?
löst ihn.
So he's now set free.
Er wird jetzt freigesetzt.
In verse 8,
Vers 8.
actually we don't have to continue, that's just more information now.
Also
Okay.
da müssen wir nicht mehr weiterlesen, da ist nur noch mehr Information.
So, but the bird that is now set free, right, into the open field. And what did we read this morning? What is the field?
Also der Vogel wird in das offene, also freigesetzt in das offene Feld. Und was ist das? Das haben wir
Yeah,
auch
the world,
gelesen.
right?
Das ist die Welt.
So it flies now and has the blood on his wings, right, and sprinkles it now on the open
It says
field.
that,
Right?
I shall sprinkle many nations.
Yes.
Says it in the Bible.
Exactly.
Also er fliegt jetzt und sein Blut ist auf den Flügeln und der sprenkelt damit viele Nationen, sagt es in der Bibel.
Okay, so likewise with this red heifer, yeah, this blood needs to be applied to make you clean from death, right?
Und genauso mit dieser roten Kuh muss das Blut angewandt werden, um dich von dem Tod frei zu machen.
This water of separation, right?
Also dieses Wasser der Absonderung.
Because at the end it says, I'm thine, O Lord, I'm no longer mine. Yeah, now you're separated unto the Lord. Okay?
Weil am Ende sagt es, ich bin dein, O Herr, nicht mehr länger mein. Also du bist jetzt für Gott abgesondert.
Okay, and what separates us unto the Lord?
Und was sondert uns für Gott ab?
Sin,
No, unto the Lord.
Was sondert uns für Gott ab?
holiness, I mean purity, Christ, the seal.
The word, right?
Das Wort.
So it's the word that.
Can you use that word separates in that sense? What separates us unto the Lord? Is that a right saying? That sounds a bit bad.
No, no. It's like Sabbath was to be separated to the Lord.
Maybe it is.
Also für den Herrn abgesondert.
Separated for God, right? So, all right. So therefore, we can see the similarities that you need to have the thorough cleansing 7 times before you can then be set free and go forward, right?
Wir können jetzt diese Ähnlichkeiten sehen. Also man muss dieses 7-mal reinigen haben, damit man dann frei sein kann und vorwärts gehen kann.
Okay. Let's just finish reading here this quote.
Lass uns jetzt noch bei dem Zitat fertig lesen.
I had some more thoughts, but somehow I lost them now.
Ich hatte noch mehr Gedanken, jetzt habe ich das vergessen.
But let's just continue in the quote here.
Lesen wir noch beim Zitat weiter.
It says, the blood of Christ is efficacious, but it needs to be applied continually. God not only wants his servants to use the means he has entrusted to them for his glory, but he desires them to make a consecration of themselves to his cause. If you, my brethren, have become selfish and are withholding from the Lord that which you should cheerfully give to his service, then you need the blood of sprinkling thoroughly applied, consecrating you and all your possessions to God. Okay, so here it speaks about this blood of sprinkling, right?
Hier spricht es über das Blut der Besprengung.
This is what she connects with this red heifer offering.
Das verbindet sie mit diesem Opfer der roten Kuh.
So just go now to Hebrews
Geht zu Hebräer,
chapter 9, I think.
Kapitel 9. Sprinkling is in Hebrews 11.
Hebrews 9, verse 13 to 14.
Hebräer 9, Vers 13 bis 14.
It says, for if the blood of bulls and of goats and the ashes of an heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So here it says, the ashes of the heifer was sprinkled upon the unclean, right?
Hier sagt es, dass die Asche der Kuh wurde über die Unreinen besprengt.
So right now we are this unclean and we are these lepers outside the camp, right?
Gerade jetzt sind wir diese Unreinen, wir sind diese Leprakranken außerhalb des Lagers.
We need to cry, unclean, unclean.
Wir müssen rufen, unrein, unrein.
Okay. But when we apply these ashes of the heifer, get sprinkled with it, this will purify us 7 times. Okay.
Aber wenn wir diese Asche der Kuh anwenden, dann werden wir davon gereinigt 7-mal.
Because it will purge, it says here in verse 14, it will purge our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. Okay.
Es sagt, es wird unser Gewissen von toten Werken reinigen, um dem lebendigen Gott zu dienen.
Because it says faith without works is dead, right?
Es sagt, Glaube ohne Werke ist tot.
Yeah. So, but works without faith are also dead works. Okay.
Aber Werke ohne Glaube sind auch tote Werke.
Okay, so therefore we need to have faith. This is what will bring us to faith, that we can then have this living service to God.
Deswegen müssen wir Glauben haben, damit es uns dazu bringen kann, dass wir diesen lebendigen Dienst für Gott tun.
Hebrews chapter 12.
Hebräer 12.
Verse 24.
Und Vers 24.
Says, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh better things than that of Abel. Okay, so this blood of sprinkling will bring us under the new covenant eventually. Okay.
Und dieses Blut der Besprengung, das wird uns letztendlich unter den neuen Bund bringen.
Okay, so and this is what the Lord wants to desire for us. Yeah, He wants, because we're all dead, right? We constantly, the Bible says we're dead in trespasses and sins, right?
Und das möchte der Herr für uns, weil wir sind eben tot. Die Bibel sagt, wir sind tot in Übertretungen und Sünde.
And whenever you were defiled by the dead, you were unclean, and then you needed this water of separation.
Und immer wenn du durch die Toten verunreinigt warst, warst du unrein und du brauchtest das Wasser der Absonderung.
And therefore, what we just read here by Sister White,
Deswegen das, was wir bei Ellen White gerade gelesen haben,
let's just read this paragraph again, 122.4.
nochmal den Absatz 122.4,
Says, just bold-faced,
nur das Fettgedruckte.
if you, my brethren, have become selfish, and are withholding from the Lord that which you should cheerfully give to His service, then you need the blood of sprinkling thoroughly applied, consecrating you and all your possessions to God. Okay, so we become selfish when we neglect the word, right? When we neglect the blood of sprinkling. Okay?
Wir werden selbstsüchtig, wenn wir das Wort vernachlässigen, wenn wir das Blut der Besprengung vernachlässigen.
But therefore we must the more than apply it again in order that we can again be cheerful givers and servants to God.
Und deswegen müssen wir es dann umso mehr anwenden, damit wir wieder fröhliche Geber und Diener Gottes sein können.
She says thoroughly applied here. The blood of sprinkling is to do a thorough work of cleansing.
Yes, exactly.
Und hier sagt sie, es muss eben gründlich angewandt werden und das Blut der Besprengung muss auch gründlich
So
gemacht
it's not just you read here and there, but you must every day apply this to you. Okay.
Also es ist nicht so, dass du hier und da mal liest, sondern dass du es jeden Tag auf dich anwendest.
Let's read the last few paragraphs here.
Lesen wir noch die letzten paar Absätze.
It says, much respected brethren, you have not that earnest and unselfish devotion to the work of God that He requires of you. You have given your attention to temporal matters. You have trained your minds for business in order to thereby benefit yourselves. But God calls you to come into closer union with Him, that He may mold and train you for His work. A solemn statement was made to ancient Israel that the man who should remain unclean and refuse to purify himself should be cut off from among the congregation. This has a special meaning for us. If it was necessary in ancient times for the unclean to be purified by the blood of sprinkling, how essential for those living in the perils of the last days and exposed to the temptations of Satan to have the blood of Christ applied to their hearts daily, right? So whenever we allow business matters to crowd out the time with God, with a sprinkling time, right?
Also immer wenn wir erlauben, dass geschäftliche Angelegenheiten unsere Zeit mit Gott verdrängen, also diese Zeit der Besprengung,
then obviously we can never be cleansed and we will be cut off from the congregation. That's what she says.
dann können wir niemals gereinigt werden und deswegen sagt sie hier, wenn wir von der Versammlung abgeschnitten werden.
Next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
You should both do much more than you have done toward bearing the burdens of the work of the Lord. I adjure you to arouse from your lethargy, leave the vain idolatry of worldly things, and be in earnest to secure a title to your immortal inheritance. Work while it is day. Do not imperil your souls by forfeiting present opportunities. Do not make your eternal interest of secondary importance. Do not put the world before religion and toil day after day to acquire its riches, while the peril of eternal bankruptcy threatens you. Every day is bringing you nearer to the final reckoning. And the final reckoning is what?
Und diese letzte Abrechnung ist was?
Final review, right?
Finale Überprüfung.
Be ready to yield up the talents lent you with the increase gained by their wise use. You cannot afford to sacrifice heaven or jeopardize your safety. Do not let the deceitfulness of riches lead you to neglect the immortal treasure. Satan is a wily foe, and he is ever on your track, striving to ensnare you and compass your ruin. We are in the waiting time. Let your loins be girded about and your lights shining, that you may wait for the Lord when he returns from the wedding, that when he comes and knocks, you may open unto him immediately. And so the waiting time should not be in abandonment of faith, but seeking for further light, right?
Also diese Wartezeit sollte nicht im Aufgeben unseres Glaubens sein, sondern dass man nach mehr Licht sucht.
You have to open to him immediately.
Yes,
Und du sollst ihm sofort öffnen,
when he comes, right?
wenn er kommt.
It's the angel of Revelation 10.
Und das ist der Engel von Offenbarung 10.
So let's go, last paragraph.
Letzter Absatz.
Watch, brethren, the first dimming of your light, the first neglect of prayer, the first symptom of spiritual slumber. He that endureth to the end shall be saved. It is by the constant exercise of faith and love that believers are made to shine as lights in the world. Right? So this is what we need to be guarded against.
Davor müssen wir uns hüten.
And the first neglect of prayer, the first symptom of spiritual slumber.
Also das erste Vernachlässigen des Gebets, das erste Symptom von geistlichem Schlummer.
So whenever we neglect the sprinkling, okay?
Immer wenn wir dieses Sprenkeln vernachlässigen.
And we think, one time I can just neglect it, but this is already Satan deceiving you and leading you already one step away from God.
Und wenn man denkt, ach, einmal kann ich es doch vernachlässigen, dann ist es schon, dass Satan dich verführt und dich einen Schritt weiter weg von Gott bringt.
And one step can follow the next and so on and so forth.
Und dieser eine Schritt kann dem nächsten folgen und so weiter.
You are making but poor preparation for your master's coming if you are serving mammon while professedly serving God. When he appears, you must then present to him the talents that you have buried in the earth. Talents neglected, abused, misused, a divided love. Okay, good. So this is what she all connects here, these thoughts, with the sacrifice of the red heifer, right?
Diese Gedanken verknüpft sie alle mit diesem Opfern der roten Kuh.
Illustrating this thorough work that needs to be done for us.
Und da stellt dieses gründliche Werk dar, was für uns getan werden muss.
And how, we are unclean, and unless we receive this water as purification or separation, we can never come back into the camp. Okay.
Wie wir unrein sind und es sei denn, dass wir dieses Wasser der Absonderung erhalten, oder dieses Blut, dann können wir nicht wieder ins Lager kommen.
Okay.
I still have a question. In Exodus 33:7, Moses is going outside of the camp, and then the others are following him.
Exodus 33:7.
Yeah.
2. Mose 33, Vers 7, da steht, dass Mose aus dem Lager geht.
Okay, let's read this. So let's read also verse 5.
Lesen wir auch noch ab Vers 5.
So, for the Lord had said unto Moses, say unto the children of Israel, ye are a stiff-necked people. I will come up into the midst of thee in a moment and consume thee. Therefore now put off thy ornaments from thee, that I may know what to do unto thee? And the children of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments by the Mount Horeb. And Moses took the tabernacle and pitched it without the camp, afar off from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of the congregation. And it came to pass that every one which sought the Lord went out unto the tabernacle of the congregation, which was without the camp. Yes, so I think.
They had to go to the cross.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think in this illustration, because before that they worshipped the golden calf, right?
Also in dieser Darstellung war es ja, dass davor haben sie das goldene Kalb
So the Lord was not in the camp anymore, he was now outside, but
Yes, but
then
it's
they had to
also
go to the
teaching.
cross. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to go outside the camp to go to the cross.
Also der Herr war nicht mehr unter ihnen und deswegen mussten sie jetzt außerhalb gehen und das ist also, der Herr wollte sie lehren, sie müssen zum Kreuz gehen.
Because he was in the camp, but yet they rejected him. It's like the temple. He was in the temple, and they rejected him, so he left the temple.
Also es ist dasselbe wie mit dem Tempel, weil sie ihn verworfen haben, hat er eben diesen Tempel verlassen.
And then they crucified him outside the camp.
Und dann haben sie ihn außerhalb des Lagers gekreuzigt.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so in this illustration, the Lord was not with them anymore. He was outside, but
Yes.
everybody who then repented went out to the cross.
Also in dieser Darstellung war der Herr eben nicht mehr im Lager und jeder, der dann Buße getan hat und außerhalb des Lagers gegangen ist, stellt dann dar, dass sie zum Kreuz gegangen sind.
They put him outside the camp. This is what it's showing. It's not, he didn't willingly, well, I mean, he willingly went, but it's an illustration by their sin. They put him outside the camp. That's him putting him on the cross.
Das ist eine Darstellung dafür, dass sie haben ihn ans Kreuz gebracht, also außerhalb des Lagers, also ans Kreuz genommen.
Yes. Okay, because the Lord said, I would consume you.
Weil der Herr hat gesagt, sonst würde ich euch verzehren.
Okay, good. All right, then let's take these thoughts, and obviously this whole ceremony of the Red Heifer is even much more deep than I understand it at the moment.
Also lasst uns diese Gedanken nehmen und natürlich die ganze Zeremonie der Roten Kuh ist noch viel tiefer, als ich es im Moment verstehe.
But we can understand that what they do now at literal Israel at the moment is just folly. Yeah.
Ja, wir können wissen, was sie im Moment im buchstäblichen Israel tun, das ist nur Torheit.
Yeah. They don't understand what it means
Spiritual things.
and how it applies here for us to be cleansed from sin.
Sie verstehen nicht, was es bedeutet und wie es auf uns anzuwenden ist, dass wir von unserer Sünde gereinigt werden müssen.
And,
Aber wieder zurückgehen zu dem Alten.
and it's only the word of God that can cleanse
Es
us.
ist
Okay,
nur das Wort Gottes, was uns reinigen kann.
okay, then let's close with prayer.
Lass uns mit dem Gebet abschließen.